All right, yesterday we mentioned that the Golden State Warriors are the first team to win the first two games of the NBA Finals by scoring 120 or more points since the 1987 Lakers, who went back-to-back in such fashion against the Boston Celtics back then, including a 141-point game in Game 2. And the leading scorer of that game was not Kareem, not Magic, not Worthy, but the man to my right, Byron Scott, here on the Rich Eisen Show.
Rich, good to see. I didn't know that.
Did you not know that?
I did not. I don't remember that. I just so when you were saying it, I was like, okay.
Where's he going with this?
Yeah, where are you going with this?
You scored 24 that night.
Wow.
Magic had 22 and 20 assists that night.
That sounds about normal. Pretty close to it.
So what the Warriors are doing right now, and people are calling all-time great. So I'm talking to somebody from one of the all-time great teams. What do you think when you hear that about the current Warriors, being said that about the Warriors?
Just
Byron?
a great basketball team. You know, you look at them, you watch them play. They play the game, I think, the right way. They play for each other. They play to win. They don't care about the individual statistics or accolades. You know, and Steve Kerr, you got to give a lot of credit to, as far as doing a great job of being able to deal with the egos that come along with being a great NBA player and having a great team. So, you know, all those guys are in it for the right reasons, just like we were in '87. I mean, we you know, Magic Johnson was unbelievable. You know, he could have led us in scoring every year if he wanted to. Same with Kareem and James Worthy. But everybody was willing to sacrifice for the betterment of the team. And when you look at the Golden State Warriors, I think the one guy who has sacrificed the most has been Klay Thompson. You know, as soon as they got Kevin Durant, he took a back seat, so to speak, and it was all because he still wanted to win. You know, so I love watching them play. I love what they're doing. They're a great team. It's going to always be a conversation on who's the greatest team of all times, and I know our team is going to always be mentioned, and I'm biased. I still think we had the greatest team that ever played the game. But it's great to have those type of debates.
So, yeah, I mean, because we discussed this also with B.J. Armstrong yesterday, and he's the agent of Draymond Green, and obviously played with one of the all-time greats, if not the greatest of all time in terms of arguments with Michael Jordan. The disease of more, which is Pat Riley's phrase, that's what tears teams asunder. And it does not appear to be hurting this team right now in Golden State.
Yeah.
Do you see how does that get communicated? How did Riley communicate that to you? How is Kerr doing what he is doing right now with all of these egos in the 21st century?
Well, I think the first thing you got to do as a coach, Rich, is be able to convince your best player that this is the best thing for everybody. You know, let's win as many championships as we can while we're together. You know, hopefully we can keep the core guys together, and that's what we did in Los Angeles. Pat was great. You know, we're keeping our top 8 guys together for as long as we can, and, you know, could. And then, you know, obviously age catches up to you, and then you got a team like Chicago who came along at the right time as well. So everybody, again, has to be willing to give a little bit or sacrifice a little bit of their game, you know, to be able to keep this run going. I remember having a conversation with a really good friend of mine who you know extremely well, Ronnie Lott, when he was in San Francisco playing. And we were winning championships, and he asked the same question, you know, and I said, listen, we're trying to win as many championships as we can while we're together, because we know, you know, time is going to catch up to us just like it will Golden State eventually, but they're a lot younger, you know, than we were at that particular time. So you just have to have guys who are willing to sacrifice, and I think in Golden State, that's exactly what we're seeing. We see a bunch of guys that are willing to do that.
So, Byron Scott here on the Rich Eisen Show. Ronnie Lott reached out to you in the, mid-'80s, late 80s?
Mid-'80s.
Because we were just, you know, obviously we talked about Dwight Clark's passing in hour number 1 quite a bit, going down that memory lane of that starting the dynastic Bill Walsh era. And it's fascinating to me that somebody from the Bill Walsh team in the middle of that reaches out to you to say, how do you do this?
Yeah, because Ronnie and I had known each other since college days. You know, and Marcus Allen as well, you know. So we were just out one summer, and he was like...
From your Pac-12 days? From your Pac-10 days?
Pac-10, yeah.
Right?
Pac-8 when I first got to the Pac-10. So, saying how old we are right now.
We have to keep subtracting, too, from our conversation. Right.
So it was a great conversation, and we had just won, I think, in '85, and the conversation was, look, we're trying to win as many championships as we can. And we're going to try to keep the core guys together, and we have an unbelievable leader in Magic Johnson who wants to just win. And that just kept us going. And then all of a sudden you saw 49ers, you know, starting to win. And I think Ronnie mentioned it in a Sports Illustrated story that, you know, I talked to, you know, B. Scott, and this is how the Lakers are looking at, you know, life in general, as far as basketball is concerned, is just keep winning as many as you can. Everything else will take care of itself.
What do you think LeBron James is thinking today? What's going between his temples, Byron?
I think as great as he is, he still probably looks back at Game 1 as a tremendously blown opportunity. But I also think with his greatness that he's probably tried to put that away as soon as possible and understand that, listen, we have to come home and take care of home. We have to take care of business here just like we did against Boston. Now, this is a different animal that they're facing, than the Celtics, obviously. But I think he, I mean, watching that tape, just watching him at the end of the game, just sit there, put his face in his hands. I think that was, telling me at least that, man, we blew it. We had a golden opportunity to come in here and steal Game 1, and we blew it. But with all that being said, Rich, he still knows that we got to put that in the past, and we got to come out here and we got to hold serve at home, just like we did the last series. And if we do that, then this is a series.
No doubt. What do you say to people who think he should have done that in real time, in the moment, with his head in his hands, realizing, okay, my teammate had a shot in the middle of the paint with 4 seconds to go for us to win it, thought that we were tied, dribbled it out. We had a timeout left. Nobody called it.
Right.
What do you say to those who think he should have, even with all that in between his temples at that moment in time, should have in real time turned the page and gotten his teammates' faces and rallied the troops?
Yeah, you know what? Again, you're dealing with such an emotional high and low when you're dealing with sports. And I think people have to understand that at that time, in that moment, what you saw was real. That was just the way he felt at that particular time. So for you to say that he should have did this, he should have did that, everybody's different. I think Magic Johnson would have done that.
He would have.
I think he would have came up to it. If I dribbled it out, he'd have came up to me in the huddle before the timeout was over, before Tyrone Lue came into the huddle, and he would have said, B, it's all right. We still right here. We still got a chance to win. Now, I don't know what MJ would have done, and we saw what LeBron did, so it's just hard to say because everybody's so different, and everybody takes that information and processes it differently as well. So at that particular time, that's how he felt in my mind. When you saw his head go down into his hands, he's like, we just blew it. And he probably didn't want to say anything to anybody. He was just kind of processing it in his head, and you got to respect that.
Well, I respect the fact that he didn't, after the game was over, when he was at the press conference, he was clearly swallowing his tongue and avoiding the situation best he could to not throw J.R. Smith under a bus, which I also couldn't blame him for doing. So when in your history of being a coach, as you were for 15 NBA seasons, and a player, as you were for 14 NBA seasons, and then in Arizona State for 4 collegiate seasons, I'll even go back to when you were a kid. Have you ever seen somebody who did not know what the score was at the end of a game? You have to think about it.
Yeah, I think I have. You're talking about 30-something years of it.
Right.
I think I have, but I can't remember witnessing anything like that, especially the score. I mean, you can understand some the time. The 24-second shot gets away from you. You thought you had a little bit more time on the clock. But the score, when you walk out on the court after any timeout, or any dead ball situation, almost one of the first things you do, Rich, as a player, is you kind of look up to see what the score is. You also look up to see how much time is on the shot clock. So I'm sure I have, but I can't remember, being in a game or witnessing the game where a guy didn't know what the score was.
Byron Scott here on the Rich Eisen Show. We'll take a 60-second break, come back, and we'll talk strategy for Game 3 and what you think can be done or should be done by the Cavs to try and get one on the board. That's with Byron Scott, at @official_B Scott on Twitter. We're back with Byron in a moment. Believe it or not, 1991, on this date in 1991, that was the moment in the NBA Finals where Michael went up for what appeared to be a right-handed slam, and when he realized that there was nothing home there, he switched to his left hand and went off glass to take down the Lakers in 1991. You, Sir Byron Scott, were on the bench for that play, correct?
Yes, I was.
So what were you guys thinking when you see Michael ascending like this in
well,
front
like
of
you said, you thought he was just going to dunk it, and I think he saw Sam Perkins kind of come into his vision and figured he has to change it up, and he made you just kind of go, wow, the guy was different. You know that right away, and I think he was evolving as a basketball player, and it was his time.
Did you sense that this was a changing of the guard? at that point?
Not at that particular time. I think after the series was over, you knew there was a little bit of a changing of the guard. That team was they were hungry, they were young, and they had a superstar in Michael Jordan. They had another great player in Scottie Pippen. Horace Grant and those other guys were just really solid. B.J. Armstrong, like you mentioned, John Paxson. I mean, they just had a really good, solid basketball team. And then they had the great Phil Jackson as well.
Was there a true animus with you and the Celtics? Like a true animus, like you genuinely did not like those guys in green?
Yeah. And it lasted for a long time. To the point where Cedric Maxwell, who's Cornbread. Cornbread.
He's doing the games now.
He's doing the games. And he was also doing a radio show before every game. And I guess all the coaches from the opposite team would come in and he would interview the coaches for his pregame. And I'm coaching New Jersey, so I'm not too far removed from not, having that hatred that I had for the Celtics. And our guy, Bob Marks, who was our PR guy in New Jersey, says, Coach Cedric Cornbread wants to come in and interview you. And I looked him straight in the eye and I said, hell no. Just like that. He was like, serious, Coach? I said, I'm not talking to him. That's awesome. That was my rookie year as a coach.
Yeah, I know, but that's the year 2000,
right.
Byron. I mean, when you say you're not too far removed, I mean, you're like 10 years at least.
Right. I couldn't do it. It took me till the next year when Bobby said, Coach, please. He talks to every coach before the game. You got to at least talk to him. I said, I don't have to do you know what. And then I finally said, okay, I'll talk to him. When he came in the room, I still had that, I'm going to stand here and, talk to him, but I'm not going to like this. I'm not going to enjoy it. But when we finished the interview and we talked for about 5 or 6 more minutes, and all of a sudden I was like, you know what? He ain't a bad guy. He's not bad. And then I talked to Danny, a few months ago, later. Mm-hmm. And then I saw, LB, and all of a sudden I started realizing that, the reason I hated these guys is because they were just like us. In a sense of they just wanted to win. They didn't care about who got the glory. They didn't care about the individual accolades. They just wanted to win championships. They just did it in a different way. So then I had respect for them back in the day, but I had more respect afterwards because I really got to know them as people, and it was kind of cool after that. So I don't harvest that anger anymore, Rich.
Well, I do, Byron, have a mandate as somebody in this chair to ask you if there is one person from the Celtics teams where you still do have that little bit of resentment for.
I don't. I don't.
Not McHale?
No.
Okay.
Kevin and I coached against each other for a number of years. Okay. When he was at Houston, I was at New Orleans, and not Danny, which would be the obvious pick. Sure. No, I don't. ML Carr, none of them. I really don't.
ML Carr, man. Hold on a second. As a Knicks fan, him with that towel. Come on now, with the towel.
Yeah.
He'd score 1 point, 2 rebounds.
Yeah, if that.
See, I could bring it. I can bring it out of you. It's in there.
But look, I mean, I've seen ML in the past 6 months. I've talked to ML on the phone. Everything. Okay. We're good.
Well, that's good. Is that missing from today's game today?
Yes. I truly believe you don't have those type of rivalries anymore because all these guys grow up in an era where they play AAU ball together. They play on these traveling teams, so they get to know each other from their age of 9, 10 years old until they get drafted in the NBA. So I don't think they harvest that type of feelings when they're with an organization like the Los Angeles Lakers or the Boston Celtics, which has so much history against one another. So when I came in the league, I inherited that feeling because, the guys I was playing with and the guys who played with that Laker, purple and gold jersey on before me, the Jerry Wesses and the Will Chamberlains and the Gail Goodriches and guys of that nature, who couldn't stand the Celtics. So it was just like that's how it's how it's supposed to be.
Well, what do you say, Byron Scott, to people who say, well, don't criticize the Warriors for being a super team. Take a look at those Celtics. Take a look at the 80s Lakers. They were a super team. Do you agree with that assessment?
Yeah, I do. I don't criticize. I didn't criticize Kevin Durant when he wanted to go to Golden State. I personally wanted him to stay at OKC, but
why is that?
I just thought that they had a great chance to beat the Golden State Warriors, and I was, like, why would you want to join them instead of beat them? Back in our era, Magic Johnson wouldn't join Larry Bird. He wouldn't join Michael Jordan, and vice versa. They wanted to beat each other. So that was my only take on it, but when he decided to go, I was like, listen, the man is his own guy. He's going to make decisions that's based on what's best for him, and I respect that.
Do you think LeBron's coming here?
I'm hoping, Rich. It's two places for me. It's either L.A. or stay in Cleveland.
Really?
Yes.
What about Philadelphia?
I don't want him, and if he does this, obviously I'm thinking more of a selfish reason.
Of course.
I don't want him to be, I don't want his legacy to be where he's jumped from team to team to team, seeking championships. I really feel as great as he is, guys should come to him, not him go to them. So.
Okay. But him coming here to the Lakers,
well,
wouldn't that be, that would be, well, I mean, you can't say he's chasing championships because the team's so young here. He would have to be part of a couple of seasons, one thinks, despite his goatness, right? And even if there is somebody who joins him, like Paul George or somebody else that might be completely off the radar.
Mm-hmm.
But coming here, wouldn't he be just trying to put 23 up against every other number? 8 and 24?
8 and 24.
I mean, just to the latest of two of them?
I think your point is well taken. But I think, Rich, if he comes here and it depends on who you get. If it's a Paul George and it's Kawhi Leonard or somebody like that, or Boogie Cousins. It just kind of depends who fits with him. Then I agree with you. It might take a year or two because then you have to get somebody else to go along with that group. So the core here in Los Angeles with the youngsters that they have are developing nicely. And if you can add two pieces like the two that we just talked about and then the next year add another one, then I think they have a chance to win a championship.
A couple more minutes left with Byron Scott, three-time NBA champion. Again, 15 seasons in the NBA head coaching spot and then 14 seasons in the NBA as a player. What do you think needs to be done for Game 3 for Cleveland here?
I think, first of all, they haven't played Golden State, that physical brand of basketball that they have to play against Golden State. You got to grab, hold, bump, hit. As much, and in the playoffs at this particular time, the referees let you get a little bit more away with that. Mm-hmm. So I think in Cleveland, we know they've played really well at home. We know that, well, we don't know, but we're hoping that a few of those role players really show up because they do play better at home because they're more comfortable. And then I think you got to rough them up. You got to rough them up. I think you might have to go to a couple of guys on the bench that you haven't played or haven't played much to see.
How about 3 words for you? Activate Kendrick Perkins.
That wouldn't be a bad idea because, you again, when you want to rough him up, he's a guy that can rough him up. But the flip side of that is when he's on defense and Golden State is coming down, they're going to put him in every single pick and roll. And there's no way in this world that he can guard Steph Curry on a pick and roll if they switch. Mm-hmm. There's no way he can guard Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson. So you're going to have to give up something if you activate him. But I think right now, you're throwing the kitchen sink. You got to do whatever it takes. You got to exhaust every opportunity or every player that you have on that bench that's available. If somebody doesn't get it going or they're missing shots, you got to get them out and bring somebody else in. And you got to see who's going to join LeBron James in this quest to win this game because this is Game 7 for them. It really is. Game 3 is Game 7 for Cleveland. They lose this game, this series is over.
And last one for you. Use the word exhaust. It made me think of asking this question. Ty Lue, as we all know, had to take a break this year.
Right.
Talking about losing sleep, wasn't eating right. You spent all those years as an NBA head coach. Can you relate to that?
Yeah. I mean, you wake up in the middle of the night, thinking about the game that you just had, adjustments that you probably should have made or that you didn't make, that you could have made. What you're going to do the next day in the film session, how are you going to approach your team? I mean, all those things, keep you up at night. Now you got to think about your opponent as well. So I can obviously relate to what Ty went through this season, and I understand it, completely. And everybody thinks of this job as being such a glamorous job. But when you're in the position that he's in with the player that he's coaching, LeBron James, one of the greatest of all times, it's added pressure on you as a coach. And I don't think we give him enough credit. This is 3 straight finals he's been to as a head coach. That's pretty damn good. I don't care who's on your team, and I know he has one of the best, but, so he's done a hell of a job of being able to coach this team and get them to this level on a consistent basis for 3 straight years. And it does wear and tear on you as a head coach.
Thanks for coming in, Byron.
Rich, always
I know
a pleasure.
I saw you at the charity golf event for the Red Cross here in
Right.
Los Angeles.
Right.
You were there, and I'm like, hey, I know we talk about it, so thank you for being about it.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate that. I'll have
My
you back
pleasure.
anytime, Byron.
You got my number.
I do, actually. Byron Scott here on The Rich Eisen Show.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern on Audience.